Does a human being have a soul, or is it just a belief? Professor Natalia Bekhtereva asked this question during one of her interviews. After a brief moment of reflection, she replied, "It is extremely difficult to visualize a person without a soul. However, what exactly do we mean by a soul? I can say that there is a lot of formal evidence of its existence and facts that do not fit within my understanding. What we are currently investigating is the result of my reflections on this topic in recent years." Throughout her life, Natalia Bekhtereva was frequently faced with questions about phenomena that science has not yet been able to explain, such as the possibility of a subtle substance that persists after a person's death. As a scientist, she could not dismiss these questions. Although she always responded with caution, Bekhtereva stressed that, despite the lack of scientific confirmation of the existence of such substances and facts that caused her concern, she indicated the possibility of their existence. "What events were recorded in the study of the Ott Institute in St. Petersburg?" she asked. "A psychic research was carried out on the transformations that occur during childbirth. The researchers examined women in labor and found that a percentage of them experience a phenomenon in which they do not perceive their own body from an external perspective. However, scientists, when documenting this phenomenon, did not refer to the soul, trying to explain it from the point of view of the mechanisms existing in our brain, known as the body diagram." Natalia asked Bekhtereva, "What is a body scheme?" According to the academician, the human brain creates a representation of its own body and, based on this, performs multiple actions. For example, if a person suffers partial paralysis in the arm, he cannot perceive this problem because the brain already has an idea of how the limb should move. According to this wrong representation, the person will act as if there is no defect in his body. Scientists are trying to relate the exit of bodies to this mechanism, but from my perspective, they will not succeed. It is simply necessary to recognize the existence of such a phenomenon in order to be able to investigate it. And what exactly is it? What could be detached from the body in order to be observed from a perspective that does not seek other definitions? But what could it be, if not the soul? Natalia Petrovna reflected on the academician's ideas. Prompted by a meeting with Vanga, Bekhtereva approached her purely out of scientific curiosity, not believing that she was blind. The old woman possesses the ability to communicate with the souls of the deceased. However, after a visit to Bulgaria, Bekhtereva recognized that Vanga has a unique personality and a powerful gift when, during their conversation, Vanga claimed that she was standing next to them, referring to Natalia Petrovna's deceased mother. Accustomed to relying only on evidence, she unexpectedly accepted these statements. Petrovna assured that, in order to understand what Vanga saw, she might be an ordinary person. "I have observed that this happens to people sometimes. They perceive more than they really require," Vanga said about ankylosing spondylitis. This happened from time to time, for example, after the death of her husband. She mentioned that she saw him as if he were still alive and heard his footsteps at that moment. He appeared to her in her dreams. One day, falling asleep, Natalia Bekhtereva saw her deceased husband, Ivan Ilyich, near their former residence. Ivan Ilyich was unhappy because Natalia Petrovna had buried him far from the family. In a dream, Ivan Ilyich asked, "What did you give my grandson?" She replied, "Dacha." Wave to the Volga, to the Dacha and to the Volga. "Well done, that's it. I ask you, how are you? You came, you passed away, you should have let him go. Where are you asking? I'll find out later. I never had time for myself. Does a human being have a soul, or is it just a legend?" I woke up in terror and ran to the portrait. "Husband, explain to me why you came tonight." I had a dream in which Ivan Ilyich was pacing around the apartment. Ilyich held the manuscript in his hands and said, "You didn't have time to publish it, you didn't read it. At least now try another deceased." Natalia Bekhtereva saw in her youth, in 1945, during that period, a young man who was courting her. A boy she liked, but he did not dare to approach her. In his conversation with him, he mentioned that he had lost his beloved wife during the war, named Tasia, and that communicating with Natalia Petrovna, according to him, helped him think less about his loss. "She showed me pictures of her Tasia. She was really beautiful. Once, I dreamed that I saw Tasia in a house. She was sitting at a table and was dressed in white. I greeted her and asked her what her middle name was, Alexeyevna. She replied, "Waking up, I felt that my friend's lover is still alive." I hurried to him to share this news and noticed that in his apartment, in the background, a woman was sitting at the table and resting in the same white dress. I asked her again, "Is your patronymic Alexeyevna?" She answered. Natalia Bekhtereva recounted, explaining the outcome of these stories. When Natalia Petrovna was about to leave, Tasia stood up from behind the table to see the guest off, and it was at that moment that it became clear that she was expecting a baby. Delighted, Natalia Petrovna left the apartment, realizing that she had discovered the deception. Now she understood why this familiar person seemed insincere to her, but in what way? Is it possible to give an explanation to some of these dreams? Researchers suggest that during sleep, a person's soul can separate from the body, and Natalia Bekhtereva spoke of dream travel. She herself believed that dreams could give us a glimpse of the future. However, she did not specify whether it is our consciousness, the soul, or some other part of us that experiences this. As for the question of whether we actually possess a soul, Natalia Petrovna answered based on two personal perspectives. On the one hand, I am a believer. Although it may sound unusual, I am familiar with church dogmas, and when I turn to God, it is easy for me to accept the idea that the soul exists, Natalia Petrovna explained. However, as a scientist, my approach is completely different. I often come across in newspapers mentions of the possible existence of certain subtle substances in humans, and I understand that this is nothing more than a theory that has yet to be proven. So far, I know of only one study that set out to investigate this issue. A researcher named Korotkov analyzed these substances and explored the presence of the phenomenon known as the Kirlian effect in the bodies of deceased people. During the first few days after death, the instruments managed to record a glow, although only as data. Research in this field is insufficient and lacks similar studies to support it, so it remains fragile and unstable. We still need to advance further and refine our methodologies. Although Bekhtereva managed to record the glow during her work, she considered that this was not enough to affirm the existence of the soul. According to her perspective, the appearance of this glow could depend on multiple factors that have not yet been analyzed in depth. The academician openly expressed, "Although the phenomenon of the Kirlian effect has been known for many years, we still do not fully understand it. We have tried to relate it to known physiological processes, and when we get some concrete results, we will certainly make them known." In one of the interviews where the mysterious glow phenomenon associated with ankylosing spondylitis was discussed, the question was raised, could the Kirlian effect be evidence that the soul leaves the body on the third day after death? Natalia Petrovna cautiously answered, "Yes, there is a glow. The body of a deceased person was searched, but nothing more. As for me, I will tell you this. I pray, and you have interpreted this as simply a religious act." Neurophysiologist Natalia Petrovna Bekhtereva perceived the spiritual path of a person as a dimension of great subtlety and elegance. Faith, according to her perspective. For her, faith did not arise as a result of external factors, outside influences, or emotional impulses. Bekhtereva explained that her faith came as a result of facing a series of difficult trials in her life. "These events completely transformed me," she said. Below, we will explore this path in more detail. Bekhtereva spoke about the importance of religion, the power of prayers, and how, according to scientific studies, they impact people suffering from juvenile ankylosing spondylitis. She knew of an atheist publication that mentioned several interesting cases. For example, it recounted how an uneducated elderly woman used cobwebs to treat wounds, while her more educated grandson resorted to medication. Later it was discovered that the threads of cobwebs contained penicillin, Natalia Petrovna explained when speaking about the elderly woman's actions. At the beginning of her career as a scientist, Natalia Petrovna enthusiastically devoted herself to studying temples, considering them to be true masterpieces of art. Over time, she encountered phenomena that were beyond the bounds of conventional science. Her husband, also a scientist, was skeptical about the possibility of such events. Although many scientists believe in these phenomena, Natalia Petrovna understood that a researcher should not ignore facts that contradict commonly accepted ideas, and she strove to find a reasonable explanation for them. At that time, she had not yet managed to understand the meaning of faith, but it was faith itself that eventually found her. This happened against a background of extremely difficult circumstances, at a time when women did not find much support in the scientific field. In 1990, a company turned against her, unleashing a truly terrifying campaign of harassment, including press publications and rallies in front of the institute, with banners and slogans against her. "I didn't think I would be able to bear it," Natalia Bekhtereva recalled. Overwhelmed by the pressure of the situation, Natalia Petrovna decided to change jobs, hoping that this would put an end to everything. The worst is over, she thought. But soon after, she faced other tragedies. The loss of 2 adopted loved ones, as well as her offspring and her husband, all affected by ankylosing spondylitis. Following the loss of loved ones that began to surround her, Natalia experienced unusual events. For example, she did not understand why someone took a photo of her deceased husband suddenly crying. On that occasion, there was a witness present who claimed to have felt someone speaking. Voices were heard and images linked to ankylosing spondylitis appeared. In search of relief and guidance, she turned to doctors. "I was treated with medication, but strange still images kept appearing, describing them as a state of neurotic terror that she had experienced before." During one of her flights to Budapest, while dealing with ankylosing spondylitis, the plane had to make an emergency landing on the return trip. She opted to continue to Moscow by train, but on the way, the train suddenly caught fire. These events shocked her so much that she developed a fear even of the sound of the hairdryer being turned on. Eventually, doctors managed to provide her with help. All these events that occurred in the early 1990s, which specialists could not explain, led her to seek spiritual guidance from a priest. He immediately helped her overcome her difficult situation. "That is how I discovered my faith later on," Natalia Petrovna shared. She also clarified that she does not try to impose her religion on others, as she considers spirituality to be a personal choice of each individual. After the events experienced, Natalia Petrovna incorporated prayers into her daily routine, both at the beginning and at the end of the day. "I pray," Natalia Bekhtereva explained, "and for me it is as essential as washing my face or brushing my teeth. It is a must. I say, who I am praying to, you decide what this is. For me, it is a completely religious act. I always wish the best for everyone who is still alive." The impact of prayer on the human brain. If there is something more behind this, so be it. It is something that expands if I can sense it. I make good wishes automatically and repeat them over and over again. After the events she experienced, Natalia Petrovna made prayer a regular part of her daily life, every morning and every evening. "I pray," Natalia Bekhtereva said, "and for me it is as essential as washing my face or brushing my teeth. It is something that cannot be missed. I say, to whom I am praying, you decide what this is. I consider it a completely spiritual act. I always wish the best for everyone who is still alive." The effect of prayer on the human brain. If there is something more behind this, so be it. If I sense it, it will expand. I make good wishes spontaneously and repeat them over and over again. Within the framework of a research project carried out by the Bekhtereva Psychoneurological Research Institute, an innovative experiment was developed. Its purpose was to investigate how prayers and words influence the structure of the human brain, using the technique of electroencephalography. The researchers identified a particular state in the brain, which they called the prayer-wake state. Based on this discovery, 3 main states were incorporated into scientific practice: brain wakefulness, REM sleep, and the slow-wave sleep phase. During the study, it was observed that during moments of prayer, the cortical activity of the brain is reduced, and information processing is carried out through alternative pathways, bypassing the usual channels. This change allows thinking and analysis to lead to the elimination of negative neural connections. This phenomenon could explain how prayer contributes to physical and emotional recovery, promoting improved health and general well-being. Manuel Sands' near-death experience. Are you sure you're living the right way? But what if I told you that everything you know about life and even death is completely wrong? Today you're going to discover something that could transform your perspective on the world forever. Think about this: a prestigious doctor, skeptical and deeply committed to science, facing death. However, instead of a definitive end, he stumbles upon the unexplainable. Manuel Sanz, a Mexican scientist, was transported to a realm that none of us can even conceive of. What he saw on the other side will make you rethink everything you've heard about what happens when we die. But wait, this isn't just a curiosity story. This video is more than just an impressive account. Stay with me until the end and I'll give you an incredible gift. A simple and powerful key to completely change your life, your perspective and, like Manuel, lead you to a spiritual transformation you never thought possible. However, this is not just a narrative of interest. This video goes beyond a fascinating story. Stay with me until the end and I will offer you an amazing gift. A simple and powerful key to completely transform your life, your way of seeing the world and, like Manuel, guide you towards a spiritual metamorphosis that you never imagined possible. I know that many of you have faced a silent and devastating enemy that hides in the darkness: depression. If you have ever felt lost, without a clear purpose, trapped in a spiral of despair, you should know that you are not alone. Manuel Sanz also faced this internal battle, and what he discovered on the other side could be the answer you have been waiting for. Get ready. What you are about to hear could be the most important revelation of your life. I know that many of you have dealt with a silent and destructive adversary that hides in the shadows: depression. If at any time you have felt disoriented, without a clear purpose, trapped in a spiral of hopelessness, you should know that you are not alone. Manuel Sanz also battled this internal struggle, and what he discovered on the other side could be the solution you've been looking for. Brace yourself. What you're about to hear could be the most momentous revelation of your life. Now, let's delve deeper into Manuel Sanz's astonishing near-death experience, and find out why the afterlife doesn't match the usual descriptions. How a near-death experience transformed Manuel Sanz's view of life. Manuel Sanz's near-death experience represented a turning point that dramatically altered his perception of what is truly important in existence. Before this event, Manuel was a prominent scientist, focused on material success, recognition, and the accumulation of possessions. His life revolved around work, convinced that happiness was found in achieving high status and accumulating wealth. However, his near-death experience provided him with a profound and unexpected surprise. During this event, Manuel describes finding himself outside of his own body, observing his surgery and being transported to a spiritual realm. There, he had encounters with beings of light and, most amazingly, he intensely confronted his past. He relived moments of pain that he had inflicted on other people, clearly understanding the repercussions of his selfish and materialistic actions. This clash with a spiritual reality made him understand that the true purpose of life did not lie in material success, but in compassion, unconditional love, and connection with others. Manuel Sanz's metamorphosis after his near-death experience. This experience completely transformed him. Upon returning to life, Manuel put aside much of his possessions and distanced himself from conventional research, focusing on the holistic and spiritual realm. He discovered that true healing begins in the soul, in forgiveness and in detachment from social patterns that lead us to exhaustion and unhappiness. This new perspective prompted him to promote meditation, gratitude, and service to others as fundamental tools for a full life. Manuel Sanz began to conceive of existence as a spiritual journey and abandoned the constant search for material success. His near-death experience, NDE, revealed that true value lies in the relationships we build, in how we treat people, and in how much we connect with the essence of love and compassion. The other world, according to Manuel Sanz. The other world does not match the usual descriptions. What Manuel Sanz experienced during his near-death experience challenged all his beliefs and expectations about what happens after death. He realized that the other world does not at all resemble the traditional depictions of heaven, hell, or any other religious vision he was familiar with. Instead, what he discovered was something much more complex, subtle, and surprisingly welcoming. Manuel describes the other world as a space of pure energy, where unconditional love is the predominant force. Instead of scenarios of judgment or eternal torment that he had imagined, he was greeted by beings of light who radiated understanding and compassion. There were no accusations, punishments, or condemnations, just a deep reconnection with what really matters: love, healing, and spiritual evolution. What struck Manuel most was the lack of religious hierarchies or established doctrines. There were no deities to punish or reward, but rather a conscious energy network in which every being seemed to be linked to a higher source. This other world did not operate under strict rules or rigid moralities, but flowed with a deep understanding of what it means to live in harmony with others and with oneself. Another fascinating aspect is that Manuel Sanz was also led to review parts of his life, especially those in which he caused suffering or acted selfishly. However, this review did not constitute a harsh judgment, but rather an opportunity to learn. He experienced the pain he had inflicted on others, but at the same time received love and encouragement to change and evolve. That perception of the afterlife questions conventional conceptions of heaven and hell as sites of reward or punishment. What Manuel experienced was a higher state of consciousness where the soul goes through a process of self-knowledge and growth. Manuel Sanz's metamorphosis after his near-death experience. For him, the other world is primarily a place of healing where love and compassion guide all experiences. This revelation completely transformed the way Manuel perceives life and death. This other world, as he calls it, is not a realm of judgment or separation, but a space of pure spiritual connection and transformation, whose purpose is to develop and reconnect with the essence of universal love. Manuel's spiritual transformation was as profound as his near-death experience. The doctor, who previously lived for material success, constant stress, and a lifestyle focused on wealth, emerged from his experience with a new vision about the true nature of life and healing. This change not only affected his mind, but also brought emotional and spiritual healing that surpassed any medical treatment he had known before. Manuel's spiritual metamorphosis was as significant as his near-death experience. The doctor, who had previously dedicated himself to material success, constant stress, and a lifestyle geared toward accumulating wealth, emerged from his experience with a renewed perspective on the true essence of life and healing. This transformation not only impacted his mind, but also provided him with emotional and spiritual healing that went beyond any medical treatment he had previously experienced. Prior to his near-death experience, Manuel Sanz was facing serious health issues. He suffered from a severe infection caused by complications from surgery, as well as chronic pain and an addiction to painkillers. He was lost in a spiral of physical and emotional suffering. His life, as successful as it seemed on the outside, was filled with emptiness and disconnection. Prior to his near-death experience, Manuel Sanz was dealing with serious health issues. He suffered from a severe infection resulting from surgical complications, as well as chronic pain and a dependency on painkillers. He was trapped in a spiral of physical and emotional suffering. His life, while outwardly successful, was plagued by emptiness and a lack of connection. Manuel Sanz's transformation after his near-death experience. After his near-death experience, everything began to change as he confronted his past actions and the pain he had caused others. Manuel was forced to face an unavoidable truth. True healing does not begin in the physical body, but in the soul. He understood that his illnesses and suffering were reflections of his departure from values such as forgiveness and spiritual connection. Upon returning from the other side, Manuel Sanz began a path of spiritual healing. He abandoned conventional medicine as the only solution and dedicated himself to practices of meditation, gratitude, and forgiveness. His transformation was driven by the discovery that love, both for himself and for others, was the key to restoring his health and his purpose in life. Manuel Sanz began to conceive of healing as a holistic process that encompasses not only the body, but also the mind and spirit. He began to share this new perspective with others, teaching that true transformation comes from within. By incorporating spiritual practices, Manuel found peace and relief from his physical pain, but beyond that, he healed the emotional wounds that caused him unhappiness. This metamorphosis was not instantaneous, but it was very significant. He understood that by fostering unconditional love and giving up ego and material ambitions, his life became lighter and more purposeful. Manuel dedicated himself to helping others find the same path to healing, teaching that, like him, we can all free ourselves from the emotional and spiritual burdens that prevent us from living fully. His experience and transformation provide a profound lesson. True healing goes far beyond what our eyes can see or what science can explain. It is in the connection with something greater, in the awareness that love and compassion are the most powerful forces to heal and transform us. Testimonies of near-death experiences. A shared story. Thousands of individuals around the planet have shared similar experiences, many of which defy traditional scientific explanations. These accounts present similarities, creating an intriguing story about what might await us beyond physical death. The intense and comforting light. Numerous testimonies, like that of Manuel Sanz, mention the presence of a bright and welcoming light. People who have had a near-death experience, NDE, describe a light that not only illuminates, but also emanates a feeling of unconditional love, serenity, and acceptance. This light is often interpreted as a spiritual being or a manifestation of divine essence. The feeling of comfort is so intense that many express the desire not to return to the physical body. Life review. One of the most frequent elements of near-death experiences, NDEs, is the life review, in which the person reviews important moments of their existence as if they were watching a movie. However, the emotional impact is profound. Instead of just observing, people describe feeling the emotions of their actions, both positive and negative. From the perspective of others, they experience the pain or joy they caused, which in many cases leads to personal transformation. This happened to Manuel Sanz and is a phenomenon widely reported by others who have experienced an NDE. Sense of unity and connection. Another recurring aspect in the testimonies is the perception of unity with the universe. People who have experienced an NDE frequently report feeling that they are part of something larger, a collective consciousness or a universal energy. They describe a deep connection with all forms of life, without distinction between human beings, animals, or the planet itself. This leads many to return with a renewed vision of compassion and empathy, committed to living more consciously and harmoniously. Encounters with beings of light or loved ones. Numerous testimonies mention encounters with spiritual entities or loved ones who have passed away. These entities of light often radiate love, tranquility, and understanding. Some people claim that their family members or spiritual guides accompanied them and gave them comfort during this process. These encounters are described as comforting and help to lessen the fear of death, demonstrating that the transition to another life is not a lonely or frightening experience, but a return to love and connection. Profound transformation in life after an NDE. After a near-death experience, NDE, many people describe significant changes in their priorities and purpose in life. Like Manuel Sanz, others who have experienced these experiences return with an intense desire to live in a more spiritual way, renouncing materialism and fostering love and empathy. The perception that there is something beyond this world drives many to dedicate their existence to helping others, becoming more altruistic and focused on spiritual matters. Initial skepticism and progressive acceptance. A significant portion of these testimonies involve initial skepticism, particularly among professionals in scientific fields such as physicians and researchers. However, over time and through personal experiences, many of these individuals come to recognize and value the lessons learned during their NDEs. Many people who have experienced an NDE, like Manuel Sanz, were reluctant to consider the experience as real due to their logical and scientific training. However, the emotional and spiritual depth of these experiences often manages to transform even the most skeptical, who incorporate these new perceptions into their lives and work. Universal patterns in experiences. Despite cultural and religious differences, the essential components of near-death experiences, NDEs, are universal. Individuals from a variety of religious or spiritual backgrounds describe strikingly similar experiences: a comforting light, a review of their life, a sense of serenity, and interaction with beings of light. These patterns challenge the idea that NDEs are merely the product of imagination or prior beliefs. The testimonies provide strong evidence that Manuel Sanz's experience is not an isolated case and suggest that beyond physical death there may be a spiritual journey far deeper and more complex than we can understand. These narratives, along with the emerging science of NDEs, continue to challenge our perception of life and death, sparking debate and opening up opportunities for new ways of conceiving existence. What do you think about all this? These near-death experiences are not simply intriguing stories. They are genuine doors to something beyond our understanding. Manuel Sanz and many others prove that existence does not end when the heart stops beating. The afterlife can be much warmer, more loving and transformative than we could ever have imagined. But now the next question arises. Are you willing to consider the possibility that everything we have heard about life after death could be wrong? That the true meaning of life lies in compassion, love, and inner healing? If this message resonated with you and made you reflect, then you are ready for a transformation. Leave a comment below with the keyword rebirth. If you, like Manuel, are ready to leave fear behind and embrace a new vision of life, full of purpose and meaning, let's join together to share this message and transform the world, one soul at a time. And don't forget, the gift I promised at the beginning is simple: your own transformation. Now it's your turn.